Listen to this first. I want to share with you the unique characteristics of this plan from Bible 805 of going through the entire Bible in chronological order, which is historical order, the order that the events happened in, and why this series of lessons is a little bit different from some others that you may have either read or listened to or whatever. Now, these lessons follow along with the schedules that are available on the Bible 805 website, www.bible805.com, where you can download the schedule in little pages that you can put into your Bible, check off the boxes. I also have journaling pages, everything that you need to go through it. But let me tell you a little bit why this particular podcast is different. First of all, in the format. The most distinctive thing about it is not a verse-by-verse study. Now, there are a lot of good studies out there that read a passage and then comment on that particular passage right there, verse by verse, and that's excellent. I highly recommend all of them, really. But this one is very different. I go through overviews of the key themes in the book, how they relate to similar teachings elsewhere in the Bible. Plus, I give you quite a lot of added historical information on each book that will, among other things, clarify and illustrate the dating and the cultural setting of the book. For example, now I'll either show you on the video or describe to you in the podcast the archaeological site that has uncovered streets and homes in Ur of the Chaldees, where Abraham lived before he was called by God to become the founder of the nation of Israel. Now, in addition to seeing the where they dug up the homes and, all the pottery and all that sort of thing, it really shows you, and I talk about this in the podcast, how advanced and rich this civilization was. When I discovered this and really looked at the archaeology and what it really meant and what that showed the society to be, it totally changed my view of God's calling with Abraham. I thought, and I don't know why I thought this, but I didn't have any reason not to think otherwise, that Abraham, when God called him, he simply moved from one desert tent wilderness to another. But that's not the story at all. When you really look at the archaeology, you look at the true cultural setting, you realize it was more like moving from a bustling city like LA to the Mojave Desert and pitching a tent there. That puts Abraham's backstory in a whole different light. It also explains, I think, why when God said, okay, it's okay for you to leave Canaan and go down to Egypt to stay for a little while there was a famine. I think that kind of explained why he wasn't too excited to leave Egypt. He probably enjoyed being back in the city again. I mean, I don't know, but it helps when you can actually see the historical setting of things. And also, too, the historical context is not simply interesting tidbits tacked onto Bible stories. Now, they are interesting. I show you fascinating pictures and studies and maps and things like that. And it does help us get a true picture of biblical characters. But it also, and even more importantly, when we study it in the historical sense, we get a true timeline of when things were talked about in the Bible and when they were fulfilled. When we can match up what happened in world history with biblical history, with prophecy foretold, and then with prophecy fulfilled, we have clear evidence that shows us how our God exists outside of time and is able to tell us and fulfill the one story that he's written that we read in the Bible. In addition, these lessons also contain application challenges on the themes that are presented in the various books. Now, if you want verse-by-verse commentary, if that's what you're looking for, and I actually recommend when I teach this to a live audience that people have maybe a Bible handbook that they can get some of those little nitty-gritty details if they want them. The one that I recommend, I really like, and it's really simple. It's Warren Wiersby's book, With the Word, chapter by chapter Bible handbook. It's really simple, it's accessible, informative. You can just get it off of Amazon for not very much at all. For more in-depth verse-by-verse commentaries, you can go to the Blue Letter Bible website, which is www.blueletterbible.org. It's free, and you can find lots of commentaries, easy to understand ones by people like Don Stewart and David Gizek, and a lot of the classics, which I actually quite like quite a bit, even though they're a lot harder to plow through. Matthew Henry is excellent. Jameson, Fawcett and Brown, Calvin. I mean, there's a lot of others that you can go through and read, and they really are all very, very good. So if you want more of that kind of thing, you can get that there. But my study is different. I would just encourage you, check it out. If you like it, it might be something that you'll want to listen to then for the entire year. But the way I look at it too is what I'm sharing with you is part of the overall, you might say, conversation that God gives many Christians where they comment on different books of the Bible or different lessons or whatever. And none of us have the whole thing figured out. None of us have the thing, the commentary, the podcast that you're supposed to listen to. But all of them work together, I think, to help us see just the real, you might say, all the facets of this great jewel that God has given us in His Word. Now, to go along with the PowerPoint presentations, I do have quite a few other things that you can download from the Bible805 Academy. I have lesson notes, and I just have figured out how to put together. I might show you how I did that in the Ministry Miscellany podcast and video series, but I now have not only the notes that you can download, but a new handout that consists of both a discussion guide and I also call it journaling prompts. It has a summary of the lesson, icebreaker question, discussion question, and application suggestions, and a prayer focus. Now, you can use it in two ways. You can either use it as a discussion guide for larger groups. When I teach through the Bible for a fairly large group, I then break that group into smaller numbers of, say, 4 to 6 people and have them discuss the lesson. You can, use it however you want and however time permits in the discussion there. But then, if you're not doing it in a group, if you're just listening to these lessons by yourself, you can also use this material as a journaling prompt. I'll have them where you can download them. I'll also be putting it into a little book form within the next few weeks. And you can, just instead of answering the questions in a group, you can just answer them right there, and it'll give you a little bit more of a chance to think it through. And it also has application suggestions and a prayer focus for you. One more note for teachers of this material. Now, not everyone would want to do this, but something that I started adding to my live classes is after people discuss things, I tell them, I either have it printed up or I tell them verbally. It just depends on the class. I say, come up with a question to ask Yvonne. It can either be one on the lesson itself or the Bible overall. Now, I have found that to be just an absolutely delightful time, and some people have said it's their favorite part of the class. Not every teacher would feel comfortable doing this, but if you are, I highly recommend it. It gives you a chance to see where your people are at. Some of the questions they ask, you're thinking, oh my goodness, didn't we cover that already? Wasn't I clear? But that's good for us in that way. But also, you really get a pulse of where people are in what they want to know about in their Christian lives. So think about doing something like that. Now, that's pretty much the unique aspects of the Bible805 chronological Bible reading plan. Now, let me talk a minute about the availability of the content. A new podcast will come out weekly on Wednesdays, and it'll be on most major podcast networks. So as I'm relaunching this, I'm having a little bit of a challenge getting some of the things changed around, but it is for sure from day one available on the Captivate website, which is my new host for it. And there is a link to that through the Bible805, www.bible805.com website. Now, one advantage of listening to it through this site is that on the little player for the podcast, if you go online, it has a link that you can download a transcript of the lesson, which can be very, very helpful. I have in the handouts for this and on the website where you can just click to go right to that. I also have the YouTube channel where you can view the PowerPoint of the lesson. That's just YouTube.com/Bible805 bible805. And then if you want to teach the lesson, this is a resource that I'm very excited about. Hundreds of people from all over the world are using it. I encourage you to use it, pass it on, especially to missionaries, to smaller churches, to people that may not have the resources. It's www.bible805academy.com. On that site, I have the PowerPoint, lesson notes, discussion guide, journaling prompts, all of that. Plus, I have the ad-free videos of the presentation of the PowerPoint lesson and audio files. Now, you can use these for either personal study, again, resources to pass on. You can edit the PowerPoints, the notes, add additional questions, whatever you want to do. And it's all for free. It's my ministry, and I encourage you to download, use it, pass it on. To get to it, it's www.bible805academy.com. Now, one last encouragement. In many years of teaching the Bible, one of the most life-transforming things you can do for your students is to take them through the entire Bible in chronological order. It will deepen their trust in God and confidence in the Bible more than anything else you can do. Now, this series of lessons has everything you need to do it. Again, lessons, notes, videos, podcasts, application materials, everything. I pray that you'll make the most of them as you help your people follow Jesus more closely and become more like him from their time in his Word. I'm Yvonne Pren with Bible 805.